For the last 48 hours, I have seen a proverbial shovel being passed around from one administration official to the next as they each dug a hole deeper and deeper. Despite black and white evidence to the contrary, Trump's national security team has taken turns denying the obvious classified information that was shared with a reporter, minimizing the risk the snafu posed to our troops, and blaming a reporter whose discretion was the only thing that kept from jeopardizing the mission further. By now, you've undoubtedly heard the TikTok to this fiasco, but bear with me while I underscore this point. The signal message system they used, which the CIA warned them 2 months ago was unsecured at best, shows that our Secretary of Defense texted a group that included a number that wasn't known to him, Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic, the reporter, more than a half an hour before the first U.S. warplanes were launched, and more than 2 hours before the beginning of a period in which the primary Houthi target was expected to be killed by U.S. aircraft. If this text had been received by someone hostile to U.S. interests, or even some irresponsible troll who would have posted on social media, the Houthis would have had time to prepare for a surprise attack and very possibly put our pilots in even graver risk. But as bad as this indefensible, monumental screw-up was, Team Trump somehow have made it worse. Much worse. As they say, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. No one has owned this fiasco. No one said, we really messed up. Even after the White House acknowledged the correspondence was in fact true, some on Pennsylvania Avenue called the story a hoax. Even after some members of the National Security Team acknowledged the highly sensitive security level of this, Pete Hegseth tried telling us none of this was classified. These same folks decided, even though they unsolicitedly included Jeffrey Goldberg, it was somehow his fault he received the thread and decided to question his integrity, which then prompted the eventual release of the digital readout confirming the very story. The list of those who screwed this thing up is long, but undoubtedly, Pete Hegseth deserves to be in the barrel. Always considered unqualified and whose personal judgment, to put it politely, is questionable at best, he has acted like a petulant twerp in the aftermath, instilling not an iota of confidence in his ability to lead our nation's defense. His lack of honesty and accountability should be a disqualifier moving forward. Congressman Jason Crow, a decorated veteran himself and a member of the Armed Services Committee, spoke to this yesterday.
I spent my life in service to this country. I deployed 3 times to combat in service to this nation. I learned in that time in service that responsibility is core to leadership. You accept responsibility when things go wrong. You admit mistakes. You set the standard from the very top. It is completely outrageous to me that administration officials come before us today with impunity, no acceptance of responsibility, excuse after excuse after excuse, while we send our men and women downrange to do incredibly difficult, incredibly dangerous things on our behalf. And yet, nobody is willing to come to us and say this was wrong. This was a breach of security and we won't do it again. It is outrageous and it is a leadership failure, and that's why Secretary Hegseth, who undoubtedly transmitted classified, sensitive operational information via this chain, must resign immediately. There can be no fixes, there can be no corrections until there is accountability, and I'm calling on the administration to move forward with accountability.
The revelations through this story raise several questions beyond the competency of this group. Our Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testified that she basically had no clue about the mission whatsoever, which is a big problem if all our intelligence agencies report through her. The dialogue and the conversation also had people openly debating, if not demeaning the mission, some even using emojis. This all the while after Trump had formally authorized it. Finally, Trump, in his reaction to the unfolding revelations, has come off as clueless at best to the mission, with no understanding of any of the processes, let alone the consequences. Trump has, however, made it clear through this episode that his people will follow his lead when it comes to lying refusing to accept accountability and to attack the messenger instead of the issue of national security at the root of this matter. This is not only embarrassing, my friends, this is deeply disturbing.